Hello and welcome to a special bonus episode of Beyond 6 Seconds. That's part of my interview with Karen Jaw-Madson. So in the previous episode, Karen and I had a great conversation about culture and her career, but we also had a side conversation about how she published her book, specifically how she found a publisher and what that was really like. So I didn't have room in the main episode for this, but I wanted to include it as a bonus episode. So if you've ever been interested in finding a publisher for your book or just been curious about the process, then I'm sure you'll enjoy this bonus episode. So your book, Culture, Your Culture, you published it through a publishing house, I guess Emerald Group Publishing. I'm curious to hear about your story of how you got your book published, like sort of beginning, how did you find the publisher? What was that whole experience like? And, just so curious to hear about that.
Well, now that I'm on the other side of it, I jokingly tell people it was the soap opera of book publishing because anything that could have happened virtually happened. And I felt that way at times during the process. So in the earliest days, I made a commitment to at least pursue publishing through a printing press, right? A publisher, as opposed to self-publishing. And I weighed all the options, but I said, you know what? I don't have to be locked into it, but I should at least pursue all avenues and see where it goes. And I was blessed to have actually met with a really good acquisitions editor who gave me great feedback on my proposal, that kind of thing. Oh, actually, I should skip earlier than that because the traditional way of getting published through a publishing house is to get an agent, a literary agent. Oh. And what that means is they go and then sell your book to the publishing houses as an intermediary. And then once a book is published, they get a percentage of the author's royalties, not the publishing houses. And they get that royalty in perpetuity. Oh. So that's usually how the process works traditionally. And I did try to get an agent at first because I had no idea how to approach the publishers. And I felt like I was applying to college all over again in the sense that I had to convince the agents to be willing to take my project on. And then they had to convince the publishers to take my project on. And I started to realize, hey, why am I doing this twice over? And I got a lot of really well-written no's and some no responses at all. So at a certain point, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go after the publishers myself. And funny enough, they were willing to talk to me. So I did meet up with a really good acquisitions editor, gave me great feedback on the proposal. And she shepherded me through the process where my proposal was considered in front of an editorial board. And they were able to get me to the contract process. Oh. So that I was feeling really good about it. And right as I was getting on board with this publisher, they did a reorg. And what happened was this editor who I was working with, who was really looking forward to working with, was reassigned to a different area. And my book project became another editor's slate. And this person obviously was not involved from the beginning and didn't have the same care and concern for the project as I had or the previous editor had. And so because of that, I didn't get the support I needed as a first-time author, and it languished, quite frankly. And this is where organizational change has an impact on people. Oh, yeah. And fast forward, I won't go through all the dramatic details, but fast forward to the point where I said, I'm committed to getting this book out. And I made the unusual move to pursue another publisher. And obviously, they couldn't offer me a contract without me getting out of my initial contract. Right. So there was a really scary period in which I was without a publisher again. Yeah. And I had to trust that while negotiating myself out of that contract with the help of my attorney, and then to be able to have that period where I'm waiting for the new contract to come in, it was really scary. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I'm skipping over a lot of spots where, finding a second publisher was so challenging because the publishing industry is constantly changing. It's being really disrupted right now, maybe in some parts deservedly. Yeah. And I would get the contact of somebody on a Friday and they'd be laid off by Monday. Wow. Or, they left the industry altogether, or there was all these things that could have happened. That's why I call it a soap opera. But getting into my second with Emerald was truly a godsend. I had a collaborative partner in this, and now I was learning about the supply chain of publishing a book. And there were also lots of lessons to be learned there. And I learned I needed to be more assertive in a way. I needed to advocate for my book project. I needed to not be afraid to be the one to advocate for my work. Then that really was practicing new behaviors for me. I'm really good at advocating for other people, not so good for myself sometimes. So being articulate about where things were and what I needed, I think that made it easy to work with other people as well. So we all kind of knew what was going on. And then the book comes out and it's a launch. And after all that, and that was a long answer, right? After all that, now they said, now's the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different skill set to write a book, to get it published, and then to promote it. Those are all different skill sets. So it's been a lot of learning along the way and learning from how not to do it either. So, but I take every opportunity as a learning opportunity. And in the process, I can tell you, I know how to do it better now.
Sure.
So I do appreciate all the experience I had through this process. And in talking with other authors, it appears that all of us have our own little soap operas or war stories to trade. So my experience is not necessarily unique.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've talked to a couple other authors as well. And, as you said, whether it's a challenging process or not, there's rejections, there's learning new things, learning about the industry as you're going through the process, and then sort of realizing at the end that like, okay, now it's your role to promote your book and help sell copies and all that.
Well, I got great advice from a family member who had published before themselves, and they really helped encourage me through all the rejections. It became this thing like, you know what? Instead of taking all of these rejections as heartbreak every time, it's just, train yourself to think about going around collecting rejections. And that helped relieve the sting a little bit. And it made me that much more grateful for when I actually did achieve getting a publisher and a partner in the process. And they've been very supportive of promoting the book as well ever since. So it's worth it. And to write a book, which can get lonely at times, to have the persistence to get it through the pipeline. I think that's the best advice I can give people is to be persistent, because so many other people might have given up earlier in the process, but then that means you don't have the book published, right? So if you feel that strongly about getting your ideas out into the world, get it out there, whether it's through a publishing house or through self-publication, but as long as it's out there.
That's great advice. Be persistent. And the concept of collecting rejections is interesting. Because in the end, if you really want to go through using a publisher, you only need one.
That's true. And same thing when you're selling a house. You only need one buyer, right?
Yeah.
And, I had the same experience with graduate school. I was working full time while I was going through graduate school, and it took me almost 10 years. And it got to the point where I was like, I'm going to finish this if it's going to kill me, because I've gotten too far to quit, even though it was really tempting to at times because life gets really busy. But anything worth pursuing, right, is worth that trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And how long was this whole process from when you started looking for your first publishers to like the launch of the book? How long did that take?
5 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, that's on the good side of it. I have heard people take 7 to 10 years at times. Yeah.
So that goes back to being persistent, not to expect it to happen, even within a year or two necessarily. So, yeah.
I have learned patience beyond what I thought I was capable of.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did you do for your book launch? Like, once it was done, it was published. Did you have a launch party? Did you have to go on a book tour? Like, what kind of things did you do to promote it?
Yeah, I didn't do all the traditional things. I think as we move into this digital age, or we are already in the digital age, so much happens online. And I did partner with a PR firm. My publisher also brought on publicists to support it. I brought on people to help me with the administrative side of things. So we put a lot of effort into it. And again, learned along the way. I think there were mistakes. There was more that I hoped that I could have achieved in the amount of time. But then again, I tell people I had the 2 babies in the 1 year because I was also getting used to being a mother for the first time.
Yeah.
So between that and trying to juggle my work and trying to promote the book, there was a lot on my plate. And so there were lessons learned along the way. So I am trying not to be too hard on myself. And of course, every author wants their book to be a bestseller instantaneously. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that sometimes it takes years to get it out there, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Unless you're Michelle Obama. Right?
Yeah.
Or Comey. His book was an instant bestseller. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But yeah, but it's worth it again, right? It's something I feel extremely passionate about. And it's a gift or a contribution I'm trying to make to a field. And to me, it's just unacceptable to have workplaces the way they are today. And if there's anything I can do about making that better, I want to do it.
Fantastic. Yeah, and it integrates just perfectly with the rest of the work that you're doing. So even if it's not a number 1 bestseller right away, it's something that, you can use to help promote the work that you're doing and promote what companies can do to make cultures better. And then you can also come in and workshop and consult with them and support the book. So it all ties together nicely.
Yeah. And, for the price of a book, I'm giving everything away. Like there was nothing I held back in how to do this stuff because I know there's so much more to be done than what one person can do. And I'm happy to teach when people need it, but hopefully the book kind of skips a few steps for that so that we can actually roll up our sleeves and do the true work and actually make a difference in people's workplaces, like I said. So let's see what happens. I think it's still early goings in the life of this book. I mean, it's only been since June. I've gotten a lot of great feedback. I love that I get tweets from, I think it was Australia, of somebody putting it on their nightstand and reading before bed. So it's the biggest compliment for a reader to acknowledge an author's work. And it's not an egotistical thing so much as a meaningful work thing, right? It's the making a difference, as I've been saying.
Yeah, that's great.
Right now, I've got great traction. My publisher's happy. But it's hard fought traction. So everything we've been able to achieve has been through a lot of hard work. And I can't wait to get it to a point where it's self-sustaining because it is a lot of work.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure, once you get the book's been out for a while and people start adopting it into their curriculums and as people learn about it, I hope the momentum continues to pick up. Well, thanks, Karen, for sharing part of your book journey. I think if people are thinking about publishing a book or just curious about what's involved, this will be really helpful for them to hear. So thank you. Thanks for listening to Beyond 6 Seconds. Please help us spread the word about this podcast. Share it with a friend, give us a shout out on your social media, or write a review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast player. You can find all of our episodes on our website, www.beyond6seconds.com. Until next time.